Welcome back to the Janome studio. Today we're going to walk you through how to use the couching foot on your Janome embroidery machine to make gorgeous designs with yarn. You can use variegated yarn, solid yarn, and any simple embroidery design to get some gorgeous looking designs and elements to add to home decor, bags, garments, and lots more things. When we get started with couching with our embroidery machine, we do have a couple different pieces that come in the kit. There are two different couching feet. There's PC1 and PC2. The only difference is that they have slightly different sized openings, and that takes into account the different sized threads and yarns that you'll be able to use in this. So depending on the size and the weight of your yarn, you can choose one or the other as long as it's feeding through freely in the machine. We also have the yarn guide bar, and I'll show you where to put that in a moment. And then we have the actual yarn guide that is going to go over here close to the needle to help guide our yarn and hold it in a place where it can feed through the foot with ease. So I know that I want to use the PC1 foot for my yarn today, my project today. So I'll go ahead and we'll set aside the PC2 foot. The foot attaches to the machine the same way that your embroidery foot attaches to the machine. So we'll remove our embroidery foot now, and we just need to loosen that thumb screw enough to be able to remove our foot. Okay, so we'll take off our embroidery foot, we'll slide that one off. We've got our PC1 foot, and we'll go ahead and slide that in the same position that the embroidery foot would go into, and you may have to hold it in place just a little bit here while we tighten that thumb screw. And I like to get it as tight as I can just with my fingers, and then I will always come back and give it a little extra turn with the screwdriver just to make sure that it's nice and tight. So there's our PC1 foot that we've got right here. Okay, the other thing that we'll want to do to get set up in this area is double check first to make sure that your needle is nice and tight, and that's going to be with this screw right here. And so for that I'll use a screwdriver just to make sure that it's tight, and then we'll slide our yarn guide over top of this. So you can see there's an opening right here, and it fits very nicely over that. So it'll stay upright like this, and we will slide that all the way over onto it like that. And that's going to be, we've got a smaller slot on the left side and a slightly larger slot on the right side. So depending on the weight and the thickness of the yarn that you're using for your couching, you'll use either the smaller one here or the larger one. Now that we've got that, the only other thing that we need to attach is our bar in order to get our yarn in here. The yarn guide bar will go up here and fits very nicely in the extra spool holder on your machine. So we'll take that and fit it and slide it right in there, and that will hold our yarn. To put the yarn through and get it set up, what you want to do is you will pull some off of the yarn skein so that you have enough that it will thread through as it's stitching, because what we don't want to happen is for it to get tangled or knotted, or if it's trying to pull itself off of the skein, it could potentially mess up our design a little bit. So we want to have this and then always be watching as it's stitching to make sure that it can pull that yarn through freely. And then it will sit here, it will go up through the bar, and then over here, this is a smaller one, so I'll put it through the one on the left, and there is a little slot that we can kind of just pull it into like that. Then the last thing we need to do is on this foot, at first glance it looks like it's a solid circle, but there's actually a little bit of an opening and a guide that we can put this yarn through, and that's going to be on the left side of the foot. There's just a little opening that we can pull it through, and you'll pull it through. It's got like a little hinged opening that closes back up, and that is ready to stitch our design. Okay, we're going to go ahead and bring up our couching design now. I'll go to my folder and then my USB drive where I have it saved and scroll through until I find my design right here and select that. And the other thing that I want to do is make sure that it knows, the machine knows what foot is on my machine. Right now, it will think that I am just using an embroidery foot, but I do want to tell it that I have my couching foot on there. In order to do that, I will come up here to the presser foot key and select it. And then you can see here, it's got different options. So this is my regular embroidery foot that it would have done it on, but then right here, I've got the couching foot 1 and couching foot 2. Okay, so I can select. So we'll do the 1, that's the one I have on, and now it knows exactly which foot is on my machine for this couching design. The other thing that you may need to do, depending on your yarn and the weight of it, if you start stitching and you realize that the yarn is kind of thick and maybe it looks like it could catch on the foot, you can still adjust the foot height from this menu, and you would select here and come down here and be able to raise or lower it as needed depending on your yarn weight, and that you'll have to watch and see how it's doing for that. After I have this and I double check to make sure that I've told the machine that the right foot is on there, I am ready to start sewing. All right, we've got my linen hooped here and ready to go in the embroidery machine. We've got the yarn already through and ready to go, and we've already at this point remembered to tell the machine that we're using our couching foot. When we start our design, what we'll do is press start, and we'll stop after maybe 4 or 5 stitches and trim off the extra thread and yarn so we don't have this extra hanging around while the rest of it is stitching out. And we will also stop and trim yarn between any color change or anytime the machine stops. And so this particular design will be 3 stripes down, and we'll stop after each one, trim the thread, and then move on to the next one. So let's first start out here, and we'll have it stitch a couple stitches. Go. There's our few stitches. So it's started out and it's tacked down the edge of our thread, our yarn already. And so we can go ahead and trim that off towards the beginning. And we'll go ahead and start. And when I start, I do remember you want to watch and make sure that you have enough yarn feeding and that there are no knots or tangles in it, and it's able to freely feed through the foot. So we'll go ahead and go with the first part of our design. When you're looking at designs that will work well for couching, you want to find ones that are not too dense. A traditional embroidery design is going to be much too dense for this thickness of yarn. It's going to try to stitch too closely together, and it just does not work as well. What I find that works well are quilting designs, because they tend to be a little bit more spaced out and you can get some very fun couching designs. All right, this is what it looks like when it's done. Can you see all of the different texture and the different values of the yarn? This really adds so much to our pillow front. So now we can take this and we will make it into a pillow, and you can see how you can use the couching foot with the different sized feet for the different yarns and be able to really add so much texture and customization to many of your sewing projects.